Tantrayadivadya shabdeshu dirgeshu kramasanstite ananyacheta pratyante parvyomavapurбhave. If the heart-mind is focused completely on the sustained sound of an instrument, such as the Tanpura, through the duration of the cycles, one may ultimately become absorbed into the supreme void. So I picked out two verses from the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, their very classic tantric work that describes 112 different yogic practices. And today I wanted to try to talk about the traditional classical music that I've studied and that I practice, and try to show how it's embedded in all of this philosophy that I've presented in the last few weeks. So the style of music that I studied originally is called Drupad, which is the oldest style of Indian classical music. Not a really lot is known about the history of the Indian classical music. I think there's kind of a lot of gaps in the knowledge. But to me, there's many things that are kind of, many of these philosophical ideas are very evident inside the music. So, firstly today I brought my Tanpura, the real thing. And I wanted to start by explaining a few elements of this instrument for a start. So, in this Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, the instrument actually it's called a tantri, which is obviously some sort of older form of a tampura, some drone instrument. But the tampura provides that drone that is the accompaniment for singing or for any kind of melodic music in the classical tradition. But it has a very special bridge. It's called a jawadi, and this bridge effectively splits out the harmonics from the overtones. So a little bit of some technical details that might be necessary to explain. So any sound, really, when it's a musical kind of tone, has a number of different little sounds that hover above it. So the note that we designate in this case as the D is the lowest sound, what they call the first partial. And then above that there are ascending other smaller sounds. And in something like a string that's very even, those ascending smaller sounds are in very particular ratios. So that means that the second sound that hovers above that, which is called the second partial, which I can induce actually by splitting the string in two. So when I do that, you're hearing that second partial without the first one. So the second partial happens to be 2 times the frequency of the first one, and the third partial happens to be 3 times the frequency, and so on. And as they go up, they get quieter and quieter. So at about partial number, after about 7, 8, 9, it goes out of the range of audibility. So those lower harmonics are really the ones that are used to create the intervals in music. It's what the musical intervals and melodies are ultimately based on, because we hear those sounds and they're physical things. So when notes make sense with each other harmonically, that's not something that's made up. That's part of nature in a way. But this special bridge that this has, which has a curve on it, and then there's a thread that goes under there that makes the string vibrate against the bridge. what it does is kind of make those harmonics cascade. So it makes certain harmonics stronger in a kind of a cascade. So if you can hear that very well. So certain of those little sounds become stronger at certain points. So there's something really special about all of the way that this is tuned, because the first two strings are tuned in unison, which happens to be the first relationship. The first relationship is 1-to-1. And then the relationship between these ones and this string is exactly 2-to-1. So if I let you hear that harmonic again, which is 2 times the frequency, that's what those notes should be. So the big one is tuned then to the ratio of 2-to-1. And then this one should be 3-to-1. So if I split this string in 3, now this is unusual because every prime number, even though it's 3 times the frequency, it's not 3 octaves. The first one was an octave, but because this is a prime number, it generates a new tone, which we call the pa, the pancham in the Indian music. So this one, but I have to match it with this harmonic, has to match with that one. So the ratios then are 1-to-1, 2-to-1 and 3-to-1. And that creates a matrix of sound with those different harmonics cascading. And the Indian musicians, listen to those harmonics, and all those little sounds floating around in there. It's a very complex kind of field of harmonics. They become how you tune the ragas. So the ragas are really based on those harmonics and on relationships with those harmonics. So that means that the music is what's called just. Uses just intonation. So why am I telling you all these technical details? It's because I'm relating it to the Mandukya Upanishad that I read in the first week. Om, this imperishable syllable, is the whole of this. The explanation, what has become, what is becoming, what will become indeed, all of this is Omkara, is Om making. And what is beyond the 3 times, that is also Omkara. So the beginning point of this, that is where I set my first tone, that can be anywhere. I just, doesn't matter where that starting point is. But wherever I set it, that's then called the Shadja, traditionally the Shadja. And I think the Shadja is a musical manifestation of the pranava, of the Om. Because all of this relationship, this matrix now has emerged out of that pranava. So what I mean, because all those relationships with those strings are based on those harmonics that are inherent in that first tone, just in the tone itself. And once that creates that matrix, then we find all of the intervals that create the ragas. So all of the music, it basically emerges out of the Shadja. So the Shadja is the bindu point, sanada bindu, that all of the music comes out of. And this kind of mythologically, in a way, something about the fact that the Tanpura is sort of often played like this, upright. It's used as a symbol often for the body, for the nadis in the body. with the meditations we did on the Shushumna and the Ida and the Pingala Nadi, which run vertically in the body. So the Tanpura is a symbol for the body, basically. And just as we breathe, and that pranava comes alive as we breathe, that on a subtle level, that anahatanad is there as we're breathing. That's the really ancient idea. That Om is the center of our being. And so this Tanpura also comes alive from that shadja, from that original tone, from that bindu point. So we come then to the idea of the raga. Raga is something that's very hard to, it's impossible actually to just define or tell you what a raga means. Because really a raga is an experience, and it's an experience of the gestalt of the intervals that I'm using. That is the notes that I'm using, but really when I say intervals, I'm saying that it's all about the relationship between those notes, not the actual position of the notes. It's the relationships, the intervals, that's how it's created. But we have to be able to grasp the gestalt of it, something that is from that whole picture. Gestalt means like the overall view of it. Something that's not inherent in those particular individual notes. It kind of emerges as a presence, as a soul. There was one particular Indian classical singer. There's a film of him. His name was Pandit Branan, who ended up living the last part of his life in the United States and teaching some of the avant-garde musicians in the United States, like Lamont Young and Terry Riley. There's a beautiful film that they made of him, and he said raga means living soul. He had very basic English, so it had an impact. He said raga means living soul, and he said raga exists in between the notes. So this is, I think, I couldn't kind of go past that explanation. By saying that it lives in between the notes, I think he means it exists in those intervals, in those relationships. So what I'd like to do for the first part today for the meditation is try to guide you towards an actual experience of raga, what raga is. Because for me it's a very spiritual concept in a way, because it's a kind of a living presence that becomes a point of focus for the musician. So for the Indian classical musician, you'll sing one rag perhaps for, could be an hour or 2 hours, for some period of time. So for that whole time, that gestalt, that raga, that living presence is what you focus on in a way. But it doesn't exist in any particular form. It's not any fixed melody, it's not anything composed, it's not in any particular note. It's just in something you feel, so it just lives in your body, really. So I'm going to try to see as a meditation whether we can get some experience of what that is. So I'd like you to make yourself comfortable and make sure that you can hear well. So I'm going to sing you a raga called Darabari. Darabari Kannada. It's a very well-known classical raga. So I invite you to just start by connecting with into your body, sitting down into your body. And opening up your breath a little. And trying to feel into that sense of the center, the hridaya, the heart, the core. Open up to the things that are coming into the field of awareness, including any mental activity that's going on. And the idea now is to listen, and as we listen, bring full attention to the listening. In the Tantric tradition, they talk about it as feeding the goddesses of the senses. And they say that when you feed the goddesses of the senses, your awareness can become absorbed in chamatkara, which means aesthetic rapture. So if you notice mind going off into other things, just suggest gently bring it back to the sound. And the other thing is, as you relax more, you need to try to have an expanded sense of awareness. The awareness needs to expand so that it can hear the gestalt and so that it can hear the spaces. And with that, I'll leave you just to enjoy. Da